My talk is about Project HawkBit, software updates for the Internet of Things. Actually, the title of the session didn't say anything about HawkBit. And the reason for that was that at the time, Eclipse didn't have secured the name. So that is done, I think, since last week. So we now can use the name HawkBit, and I think also Stefan Färber and a couple of other people already mentioned them. We used them on Twitter quite some time, but now we can officially use it. So basically the talk will be about software updates in IoT, and to be more precise, about an Eclipse project that Bosch is currently starting in that context. First things first, about me, Kai Zimmerman, working for Bosch around a decade now, basically always in the areas of, I would say, all things Java and cloud. And since 4 years, I think, working for a company, Bosch Software Innovations. For all of you who have heard yesterday the keynote of Stefan Färber, he's actually my boss. He is in charge of creating our open platform for IoT, and as part of that, we try to collaborate with open source communities as much as we can and contribute wherever necessary and appropriate. I have two hats now on my hat. One is being the project lead for Project HawkBit and Eclipse, and second of that, product owner for the commercial product that is on top of that, which we call Bosch IoT Software Provisioning. And next to that, I also currently in charge as product owner of our lightweight end-to-end server activities, which we will see if I can continue to do, have so many hats on my hat. I have a wonderful wife, 3.5 kids, so number 4 is on its way currently. We have decided to stop after that, so 4 hopefully will be the final number. If I have time left after that, I run a lot. Sometimes I overdo a little bit, so my right leg is right now being a pain in the ass, but hopefully that's also going to be solved. About Bosch, I think most of you have heard the keynote yesterday of Stefan Färber, so I guess you already know. For those who have missed it, long story short, Bosch is a thing maker. That's what we do. We produce around 3 million things a day throughout the year. And we have a relatively clear mission from our CEO, Mr. Denner, that he wants to be able to connect all of them. And when he says all, he means all. So he's even tracking that. So the final number will be 100% of every device that Bosch is going to make in the future can be connected. Doesn't necessarily mean that we connect all of them. Customers might decide that they want to stay offline and they are fine with it. So we will do that, of course. But in theory, you can connect every device if you want to. And as you have already heard yesterday in the keynote, Bosch, around 50% of our revenue is in the area of automotive. So obviously the connected car is a major topic for us, but also other topics, Industry 4.0, smart home, smart heating, connected security, etc., etc. So that is what Bosch is all about. And as Stefan mentioned yesterday, we have 3,000 engineers roughly working on IoT right now, and I'm one of them. So, software update, that is the topic. Why do we need software update in IoT? And the obvious reason, I think Stefan mentioned this also yesterday, is security. So, some of our customers already have that problem, that they have a security issue in one of their devices, like Chrysler currently had that issue. I think they have to return 1.5 million vehicles, or something in that dimension. And Stefan mentioned yesterday, if you just calculate roughly €1,000 or $1,000 per car, that's actually quite a number. As soon as you start connecting things, the risk obviously grows. And as a result, we believe, and I always tend to call software update in IoT a core process in IoT, because I believe it will be part of every IoT project in the long run. If you can't update, you better don't connect. That's what I believe. But that's just the first and most obvious reason. But I think this is just the bad side of things. Okay, we are connecting to the scary thing called internet, so we should be able to update. But there's another reason, and that is, I call it here, enabling agile development in the hardware space. And this is actually companies like Bosch are talking about for quite some time, but I think the technology infrastructure is not there yet to do this. So Tesla is quoted quite a lot, and actually, as some of you might know, a lot of this automotive, actually a lot of Bosch colleagues coming now to the room. You're late, but please sit down. So agile development. If you look what Tesla actually did for the automated driving topic use case, they put the hardware in the car without having the feature enabled. And the reason for that was that they decided to make the hardware first and then software after that. And as a result, they were able much quicker to have throughput on the market, because they didn't have to wait, which is typically done today in the automotive domain. So if you want to make a new piece of equipment for a car, and that is what Bosch does, you have very often 3 years, 5-year projects. So you do a 5-year project, you make your hardware, you make your software, you make quality assurance, everything, get everything ready, and then you put it in the car, project stops. That's it. That's a piece of hardware you got for your money, and then you're done. And companies like Tesla are trying to changing that right now. Bosch is trying to change that right now. Get faster to the market and have an approach to iterate on the capabilities of that hardware later on. Put all the intelligence in the software. And I think this is something the software industry and all of us as software developers were able to use for quite some time. I think most of the development of today's cloud services or these fancy apps, what all the startup scene is doing, would not be possible without the capability to update later on in the field, in the cloud, on my desktop. So for us, this is not really new. But if you see hardware in a car, that's actually quite a new topic. A lot of car manufacturers are working in that direction. Yeah, I think Tesla is just the one who is promoting this more than anyone else. But it's not only a topic of automotive, of course. Actually, the product I will talk about in a couple of minutes started in the area of smart home. But if you look in Industry 4.0, same scenario, energy management, same thing again. So it does help, and if you have this agile development by means iterative progress of your product, this is something that you can do with software update over the air. Yeah, and sometimes it's a business model on its own. So again, coming back to my example of Tesla, Tesla is promoting software update as a key feature of its cars. So it's not just a necessity, which is usually the case in IoT. You do a telematics scenario, you do a smart home, smart grid, and you just need software update, under the hood. This is, I would say, 90% of the projects that we are currently doing are like this. But sometimes software update becomes a feature on its own, and there is a business model behind it. So this is what we figured out, and this is why we started on this. Actually, we started with software update in IoT context 4 years ago. This is actually the 3rd time that we are doing this. The first 2 times more or less failed. We made a couple of mistakes there. So we learned a lot, and we came up with a new solution, and this is basically what HawkBit is all about. And what are the major challenges that we came along? And that is one big important thing is security. I always say that software update in IoT is the one thing that can help you with everything. If you are already able to update a device, you can fix every problem. Fix any security hole, fix any kind of functional or non-functional problem of the device. But at the same time, it's the biggest risk to the device. If you're able to update it, you can break it. So that's the best thing. It's the biggest door you're opening on your device. Because you can open as many doors as you want as soon as you're able to update. So security is a major challenge, and it's something that it's not about traditionally, okay, I need authentication, authorization, hardened cloud service and everything. You need end-to-end security from the guy who created the software for the device, signing it, for instance, with a smart card, up to the device itself that needs to ensure that only the right software comes on the device. So it's an end-to-end security, and I think in this context you cannot do anything less. It's not just about having an encrypted communication channel. It's about trust between device and the guy who created the software in the first place. All the other stuff you need too. You need authentication, you need authorization, you need encryption, but you need also end-to-end trust, end-to-end chain of trust. And actually Bosch has a lot of products in that area, but yeah, it's a sponsored talk, but not too many commercials here. But it's not just something that HawkBit can solve. API stability, this is something that many people in the cloud space, traditional software developers, underestimate. I know from a lot of Bosch projects, sometimes they have created a hardware and sold to the market 3 years ago. Just talked to a project lead a couple of months ago. They have created, manufactured, and sold hardware, now I think it's 3.5 years ago. and they are getting connected for the first time right now. So that means that device is talking to a cloud through an API where this device thought 3.5 years ago, this is how I should do this. Don't underestimate that problem. And 3.5 years is not much. If you have a car, for instance, even if you have the car connected for the first time, a car has a lifetime of 20, 30, 40 years. So handling APIs becomes, I think, a new topic on its own. That's why I personally also believe an API for software update should be the most primitive one you can find, because basically you will have to invest quite a lot to keep that one stable. The other one is scalability. So let's go again to the automotive scenario. I like that one very much. Automated driving again. I don't know if you're aware that this is not just, automated driving is not just about having great sensors in the car and then some crazy fancy algorithms. Actually, there's a lot of data in the car that allows the car to drive on its own. Actually, gigabytes of high precise map data is required and will be required in the long run. And today maybe it's 4 or 5 gigabytes, but this will grow. There are a lot of people in the automotive space who believe that a car in 2020 will have something like 16 to 20 gigabytes of software running on it, software and data. So now imagine you have just a million car. I'm not talking about the millions of millions, I'm just talking about a million car, which is actually not very much in that market, and you want to update, let's say, 5 gigabytes. That's actually quite a number. And you get, so in IoT, I think overall, you will get very fast in areas that is today covered by companies like Apple who want to do an iOS update, or Microsoft who want to do a Windows 10 update. So these are all the kind of challenges that we have. That's what I mean with technical and functional scalability. We need to be able to scale during an upload, but also in an economic, smart way, by means that we don't waste too many resources. And with functional scalability, I also mean if you want to update 1 million cars, it's not anymore about dragging and dropping in some GUI. Okay, here I have my 1 million cars, here I have my software package, I drag and drop this. And actually in my demo I will show you how we drag and drop today, but this is not how it's going to be in the future. This is not how we will handle IoT. We need the capability to cascade rollouts, manage rollout by software rollout by means of having a workflow, a process that organizes and federates all the systems involved in order to organize a global rollout. And actually this is something we have not fully covered yet with HawkBit, but I will come to that later. I think this will be one of the most and the biggest challenges in the long run, to have a secure, safe update for devices. Because we are messing around with, I think Stefan Ferber mentioned this yesterday, don't underestimate this. If you're updating a car, there's a lot of stuff you can break. People can be harmed. And it's very important to have this in a secure and safe manner done. The solution, Project HawkBit. Actually, that picture is originally from our commercial product, but I reused it also for HawkBit. I think, it's relatively clear what this is all about. It's about a cloud service that is able to manage the rollouts, software rollouts. And we decided, and this is actually one of the lessons we learned when we started with IoT, we thought a lot about OSGI, so we came up with a solution to update OSGI bundles. But in the long run, we figured out, IoT is more than OSGI bundles, so I think we need something that is more generic. We also figured out, and this is in fact a lesson we learned also, software update from IoT perspective is relatively domain independent. So automotive guys hate that, but if you updating a smart home and updating a car is relatively the same from a backend perspective. Updating a car is a really complex task inside the car, because actually a car is not a device, it's a summary of 70 to 80 devices that you can update with very different complexity and architecture. Many of them embedded, but from the backend perspective, it is at the end of the day, I have a device, I have a piece of software, bring those two together. So we decided, okay, let's create something that is domain independent and that is really independent of how you connect the device to the cloud. So this is not a device management system. This is not a cloud connector. It's about managing software updates. I will come to that in a second. And that is basically about what HawkBit does is actually it offers the capability to connect devices directly to it, just for the for the single purpose of software update, or indirectly through another system. I think I have a picture for that later on. what are the reasons? I said already, we believe IoT software update is something that you will have everywhere in IoT. What we saw or figured out is actually every IoT solution that Bosch created had some update capability in it, and a lot of that was created in parallel. For some extent, because we messed up the first 2 times when we created this on a platform level, so they had to. But I think in general, what we figured out is, okay, we have this everywhere. And there was a lot of duplicate work in that area. I already mentioned domain independence. And then the next question, of course, is, well, we have device management for that. Why is not just device management doing this also? And in fact, more or less every device management that I've seen so far has some kind of software update capability. But usually, this is more about performing the software update directly. So telling a device what to do, where we said, okay, we need something else, something that manages on top of that all the, I would say, secondary functionalities, like managing the overall rollout, independent of the connectivity of the device, independent of individual device management, having statistics, reports, a system that can tell you which software is on which device on a global scale, audit logging, stuff like that. I wrote the topic functional safety was several times mentioned. I think it's also very important in many IoT domains that you can precisely say which software was on which device at which point in time and who did it. So these are kind of reporting and audit logging functionalities that you also need in addition. And you need this independent of the individual device management because you might have multiple ones. Exactly, and we have a lot of projects. So in the past, we also had a product, I think on slide level, we still have it, at Bosch, which is called M2M device management. So original approach was, okay, we have one big system, takes care of everything, controlling the device, monitoring the device, pushing data on the device, getting data from the device, doing software update, etc., etc. And this made, for our projects at least, this a very black and white decision. Okay, I take this big box, use it for everything, or I don't use it at all. And this didn't turn out very well. I don't like the term microservice so much because I think it's overused quite a lot. But we figured out it is a smart move to split this up. And in fact, that was also one of the lessons we learned. And Project HawkBit, or Bosch IoT Software Provisioning, was founded last year with the direction, okay, we create now a service that is purely focused on software update. So if a project decides, okay, I do everything, I do the whole banana myself, but software update I take from the platform, so this is now an option that we can give. And I think this fits also quite nicely to the whole way open source communities work. So this is actually our commercial product, but because we are giving around 90–95% of it to the open source community, it's more or less the same. I have to go faster. Basically 4 core capabilities are in it. Device and software repository, artifact content delivery. This is actually a topic that is underestimated a lot. Yeah, we have content delivery networks, but you, for instance, you want to have not only authentication for the device, but also authorization. So you want to make sure that the device can only download the software that was meant to be on that device. In the past, for instance, we also used web servers just for that, just my HTTP server. We even had certificate-based authentication, but still, if you had a valid certificate, you could download whatever you want. Actually, pretty bad idea. There's a lot of intellectual property in firmwares for devices, so you don't want to give them away for free. Then this entire software update and rollout management area. And the 4th use case domain is reporting and monitoring, as I mentioned. We are offering 4 interfaces to the system. To the north, a graphical user interface. Many people say, okay, you don't need that, you just need an API, and then every domain will create its own UI. That's okay, but if you don't have an UI at all, usually people don't believe in what you do. We have an API. Those 2 are basically functionally equal. In theory, in reality, sometimes we have customers who need a feature only in UI, only an API, and then we do this first, but we always have hopefully a backlog item saying, okay, let's get them in sync again. And this is important. To the south, we have 2 integration options. One, if you bring in your project your own device management, or you have a device management in your platform, like for instance, Bosch has now acquired Process, so we have the Process MPRM. So that would be an example of connecting here, or IBM's IoT Foundation, or again, the device management that you have created precisely for your domain, your project. So that is a way to integrate the devices. So that's indirect device integration, and we also have a direct device integration API, which is a very primitive RESTful JSON API just for the sole single purpose of software update. We believe a lot in that API. I think it's always a good idea to split your concerns also on the device side. Doing with one piece of software everything on the device has a great risk. So for instance, what we do in fact in a lot of projects, and that's okay, but you have to make your choice there. You have your OSGI runtime on the gateway, and you do everything inside that runtime. Your business functionality, your software update, device management capabilities. What if you break that runtime? So you have an OSGI bundle that goes crazy, does out of memory exceptions like crazy, for instance. You're not even able to fix this anymore because you cannot update. So in some scenarios where you see this as a risk, it really depends on how you treat your OSGI runtime. If it's a very stable thing, with a stable set of bundles, that's okay. But for instance, if you have a scenario where you want to change OSGI bundles all the time, be sure that your runtime is secure. And in such scenarios, it might make sense to have a second process, not even done in Java, maybe done in C, C++, that is only one single purpose, updating software. And this is basically your watchdog, your watchguard. That is the one thing that can always repair the device by putting it back on a software state that works. So that's why we still keep it, but I have to be honest, most of the projects that we currently do at Bosch goes through this direction, but we still believe there's a lot of value of having a direct integration API. And also, of course, it helps a lot for testing, trying out the product. You know, you can take a device, put a small Python script on it, directly connect it to the HawkBit server, and just go. So we intend from our side to support and continue to support both of them. I mentioned this is RESTful. This is ANQP based currently, but definitely something, I guess, where the community can stack on a lot. And also off-the-shelf device management integrations. We have 2 commercial products at Bosch where we have done integrations, but yeah, the protocol is open, so I guess everyone in the community can integrate it. Technically, I will not go so much into detail. We have technically 2 services. A download service, which is something you can distribute globally, and the update service that is actually managing everything and has the repository. This is a Spring Boot based application, so there's a lot of green Spring stuff in it. We have for the ANQP interface an ANQP interface there. We use MongoDB GridFS for storing artifacts. A lot of people ask me, why are you doing that? This is crazy, just use an NFS share and you're done. Reason relatively simple, this piece runs also in Cloud Foundry. We have it running on Pivotal actually, and we also have a beta system running on Bluemix. And in Cloud Foundry, NFS share is a little bit complicated thing, so we use MongoDB. This is something you can get on every cloud. And GridFS extension works actually pretty well. It's more a question of cost efficiency, I guess, in the long run. And a relational database for all the metadata, the devices and the software metadata. And we have a prototype running using Redis for cluster communication and session cache in a clustered environment. Actually, that's not really production-ready code, I would say. So we at Bosch don't use it right now, but this is definitely something we want to invest on in the long run. Okay, so let's see if I can get a demo running without... now I have to sit down here. I already mentioned this is like being a teacher here. Even my session is still running. So that's basically it. This is the user interface I mentioned. I just want to go very briefly through it. I hope it works from the colors. Something's a little bit dark. So what we have here on the right side are software packages. Actually, what the software package is made of is also something you can define in the system. So we have a relatively hard model by means that what you assign to a so-called provisioning target. Provisioning target is our name for device. Why are we not calling it just a device or a thing? The reason is if you again look at a complex thing like a machine or a car is a provisioning target, means you are assigning software to it, but it is actually not a device, it's 70 devices. So that's why we use the term software provisioning target. But if you say provisioning target equal device, I think we're just fine. Then we have something what we call a distribution or distribution set. This is what you assign to a provisioning target. And the set is made out of software modules. So this can be everything. It's just our data model. You could say a software module can be an OSGI runtime, a Linux operating system. A software module could also be something like an OSGI bundle or an app, a Java virtual machine, you name it. It's just a one-to-N relationship or N-to-M. You can even reuse software modules between distribution sets. We didn't want it to have the full complexity of a configuration management here. This is not a configuration management system, but at the same time give people more flexibility, like, okay, I have a zip file and this is all I can do. So you can put a more complex structure together. And again, every software module can have as many artifacts as you want. Why is that? Even for a firmware, you usually have the full firmware package for a device. You might have data packages in order to save bandwidth. You might have signatures as extra files. So for every software module, you can again upload as many artifacts as you want. And in fact, artifact is a thing that you don't even have to manage through HawkBit. So you could, for instance, say, okay, I have my content delivery network, I have my web server over there who hosts all the artifacts, so I don't need HawkBit to do this. That's possible. So in this case, HawkBit will only take care of the update management. So if I go back to the slides, don't worry, the demo's not over yet. But what I basically have done, we have created a very small, tiny device simulator that uses this interface here. In order to create and simulate devices. So that thing now will create devices here. Just give him, I think he will create 20 devices. And what you then do is, let's say, very simple, I select all of them, so I do the big drag and drop, but don't do this with 1 million devices. In fact, the UI can't handle it, but yeah, you shouldn't do this. And then I assign a distribution set as I mentioned, and then you press save and the system updates. So that's basically it. This is exactly the very small example where we created HawkBit because we believe this is not how it's going to happen. But in fact we have use cases. So if you're a developer and you just have, for instance, again, automotive, sorry, I'm not even originally an automotive guy, but you know, if you work for Bosch 10 years, you can't help it. Every year, a lot of OEMs and also Bosch send a lot of cars to Scandinavia, at least in Europe, to test for snow and ice, etc. And what basically happens is a guy is driving around on snow or on ice, on a lake, and then they find an issue, and some software developer, you know, can change some configuration, and he's sitting in Stuttgart, for instance, if he's from Bosch, he has a fix for this. So how do you get the fix on that car? This is exactly what software update and IoT is all about. But we are not talking about 1 million cars here, we are talking about 20. And even in this process is a lot of business value. Don't underestimate how much money Bosch and OEMs are investing every year to get that process done, to work in Scandinavia and work on the software. So there might be a lot of business cases where you just have a couple of hundred of devices, and then you have other business cases with millions. So coming to the millions, actually that is what we are currently working on, having a complete rollout management that can handle 1 million devices. I don't have the time now because I'm running out of time in 2 minutes. I want to give you the opportunity to ask a couple of questions, and I know I talk fast. Long story short, we are working on this currently, and as soon as we are open in the community, we will share also our thoughts on that. But in order to get started last year, we started with a simple case. We call this direct deployment. And I think this is a good point to get started. As I mentioned, I just use always the UI to show it. Everything is available through API. Managing the repository, like I've shown here. We have a lot of metadata. I can't go into detail here. We have tagging and stuff like that. There is a lot of functionality there. The core functionality, however, at the end of the day will be I assign the distribution to a target. And then I have what we call the action history. So this is basically how the update worked. We have a feedback channel, so every device can turn back as many data as necessary in order to get a good picture what actually happened on the device, how was the update done. This simulator is very, very simple here, but actually we have devices who give back, I don't know, 50, 100 messages, stack traces, whatever you want. so that everyone can say in the long run. So if I do again a software update, so let's maybe have the time for this package tool, which I think is very important for us, that we have a full history, what was done on which device, who did it, what happened, how did it work, how much time did it took, etc., etc. So that is basically the core capability. No, that was wrong. So let's come to the project status, and my hopes are that that today or this EclipseCon can be a starting point to discuss about these topics, and also get you or get the community on board. So far this has been a thing that was just discussed and done inside Bosch. The project proposal was created 21st of September, and creation review is actually scheduled for today, so press your thumbs that this will become, hopefully with today, a full-blown Eclipse project. And we are almost ready for the initial contribution. In fact, if you just saw my demo, there is of course also a Bosch offering for this. So this is actually the official Bosch service. Looks relatively similar, but this is, let's say, the commercial product. While the other thing that I just showed you here is basically what we intend to contribute to Eclipse. So we are also very open there. So I would say actually 3 SP developers from Bosch are sitting here in the front row. So maybe guys, can you maybe stand up? So everyone sees you. So Michael is actually the committer that I mentioned here. So he and me will be the first 2 committers. Eclipse already assigned 2 managers, and we have already listed 2 interested parties, Siemens and VeriSign. And actually, we would really like if you guys take a look at the HawkBit proposal. Give us feedback, and maybe if you're interested, get yourself listed as an interested party. That really helps. That is actually appreciated. We have a very strict open source policy at Bosch. So Stefan Färber mentioned yesterday the discussions, and we have also a lot of lawyers. So as a result, without being on Eclipse Git repo, we are not allowed right now by Bosch regulations to give you the source code. So you have actually to wait until all that IP checks and everything is done. So my recommendation, look in the proposal, maybe follow my Twitter feed. I have never been a real Twitter user, but I decided to change this now for this project. So I try to keep everyone updated what the progress is on the project. So this is my recommendation. And this is a sponsored talk, so maybe I can do a little bit of commercial here. Actually, we have even open positions in the software provisioning team. So that is that for the commercial part. And last but not least, yes, I'm really interested in your feedback. About the talk and of course about the project also, but for that please come back here. So thank you very much, and I think I have 2 minutes for questions, right? Yeah.
How do you handle enrollment of devices?
I'm sorry, the environment?
Enrollment. How do because I have a device, how do I authorize it to be managed by your software updates?
Yeah, first
I can have a fake device.
First of all, you have to, yes, connect it to the device, to the software provisioning service. So that's the first thing. On the device itself, so for instance, you're a user or owner of a device, and you don't want it just somebody from the cloud just updates while you're using it, right? We have that scenario, so SP in fact supports, so first of all, the decision to do the software update is always done on the device. So SP or the HawkBit server cannot force anything from the cloud. It's just telling the device, please update, and then the device can make a choice. What we have in the system on metadata level, we can give the device a hint. We call this soft and forced update. So if the device manufacturer decides to use that, soft update means maybe ask your user, maybe wait for the right time. For instance, a car should be standing still if you update, or if you're a smart home user. In fact, in our Bosch smart home solution, you're getting asked on your smartphone app, hey, there's a software update, do you want to do that? And then, however, in some scenarios, it might make sense to do the update no matter what. Security, for instance.
Well, I was getting more at trust. How does the device trust the updater, and how does the updater trust the device? Because you have to establish mutual trust.
Exactly. So Bosch is doing this a lot with certificate-based technology. So there is a signature on the firmware, and then even for embedded devices, the bootloader checks, okay, is this a firmware update that is correctly signed? That's, however, proprietary technology that Bosch has there, but I think the mechanisms are relatively open. And of course, the devices do also usually authentication towards the SP server. So based on that, for instance, using TLS or DTLS in case of lightweight M2M, you can also establish trust with the backend. But more important is trust with the firmware piece itself. And this is done by signatures. Yeah.
Do you only make software updates, or do you also know about the data models inside the devices and can manage on a fine-grained basis separate data points inside the data models?
Actually, Bosch doesn't know a lot about that, and we have a lot of products on this, processed and also Bosch itself, but this is just for software update. Yep.
Do you just provide like the update server? Do you have, you said you work a lot like with OSGI bundles, do you have like a sample that you open source of an OSGI bundle updater?
Yeah. Actually not. It's not part of the initial contribution, and I've got the stop sign, so sorry, last question. But